Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today we have something very interesting to talk about because I think last time we spoke about how certain injustices that we do to ourselves and how certain abuses that kind of leads to our bodily dysfunction as well. So even though this series is about a lot of bodily dysfunction, but we are trying to understand how our emotional factors are really connected. So I think Pauline here has something very interesting to say today to all of us. And I think let's just give it to Pauline.
Okay, hi Anne. Um, she's right. We're going to talk about something very interesting today, which is specifically something to do with two things. One, how to be in a healthy relationship, and two, how to actually grow in that healthy relationship. So you might be wondering how this is related to our physical health. Well, to kind of demonstrate the connection, I thought I'll use this example to, give clarity. You know how sometimes when we actually don't feel hungry, but like rather we feel mentally upset or emotionally not in a great place, we compensate that feeling of loneliness or whatever with like food. Have you ever wondered why you go to food more when you're upset? This is something that you would also see with your cravings in terms of, having that extra dessert or your midnight meals when you're actually like, done with dinner, but you go ahead anyway. So these are spaces that we need to like sit and think about. It's not really a matter of nutrition, but rather it's something else. So this is something that we'd focus on today. So emotional needs. Maybe I'll start by asking this question to Anne. Anne, what do you think your emotional needs are?
Emotional needs
Yeah.
to be to be validated, to be loved, to be seen, to be appreciated, and to be considered important, I guess I would say.
Okay. So you're right about all these things. Now, how do you actually get validated? How do you get heard, seen? How do you get love?
Hmm. I guess it's that's a deep question. um, we would want our friends, our family, our partners to kind of do this to us. But I think over the years, I've realized unless it comes from you, it's never gonna feel full. You're always gonna feel empty unless it's going to come from you, because I feel like the validation that we are expecting from people will always be something that's short of what we expect. So I think, yeah, it has to come from me, I guess. The way I treat myself, the way I speak to myself, the way I put myself in certain situation, stuff like that, I feel. Is it? Am I right? Is that what you want to know?
I'm gonna disagree with you here because I think like feeling validated, feeling seen, feeling loved, these are kind of our survival needs. Our emotional needs are as important as our, physiological needs. And a lot of times we kind of fail to realize how co-regulation, that is, being with someone when you're actually stressed, being with someone when you're, dealing with something that's uncertain or something that's very negative that's happening in your life can actually help regulate your life for you. So when I say regulate your life, this doesn't just mean your body, it also means like your like work, your mental capacity, all these things kind of get regulated better when you have someone with you. So if you look at like people or
Hmm.
even animals for that matter, when they are in groups, right? You have a higher chance of survival because you perceive danger less when you're in a crowd. So, in one of the episodes before, we spoke about herd mentality, right? And we often judge people for having this herd mentality because we think you should be self-sufficient, you should love yourself. But how do you love yourself when being alone is so scary?
Hmm. So you're saying people, you need people, and then these people make us a better person, and this they give us all the needs that we need to survive.
Yeah, exactly. So the question that I asked you before, right? and I'll also ask our listeners, when you know these needs are there, how do you get it? This is something that we need to ask ourselves, because a lot of times when we ask for it, right? Like when I say I need a hug, or when I say I need validation, it often kind of gets phrased as she is attention seeking.
Or
She is someone
desperate.
who is desperate. Yes, exactly. So when you kind of, grew up in this emotionally abusive society, right? How do you actually get out of it and validate yourself to know that your needs are normal? Uh, so this is something that we spoke about in the previous episode, right? Where we mentioned emotional abuse, and how when you grow up in like a toxic family where they are themselves like very sad, but then they don't realize it, they don't have the self-awareness for it, but they kind of tell you that something's wrong with you for asking for attention and affection. So how do you actually get comfortable with being healthy, get comfortable with asking for validation, asking for attention, asking for affection?
Hmm. But I just feel like so far that we've understood that, asking for validation from people is a bad thing, that you are
Yeah.
expecting from others. You're sort of like, say, most people, their self-esteem depends on how somebody else rates them, right? How somebody else treats them, how somebody else, loves them. So do you think that this is a different thing from what you are saying?
I think it's not very different. It's just a matter of, again, understanding uh, your past patterns, and then, working towards a future that you know is healthier. So, one thing that, I see with my clients, so I have a practice, right? And you also practice psychotherapy. So, what we see is, this is something you might have seen as well. If we're looking at relationship problems, we see that the kind of person the, client dates, right? They're usually the same type, but then in different bodies. So it's almost like, the same problems keep happening. And then you will see this client kind of saying, I don't know why these things happen to me. He said the same thing my ex said. And that's kind of how it goes. So the question to ask is, how is it that somehow in this world you seem to find the same kind of people? And this is a question of self-awareness. Where is this pattern coming from? What is it that you're allowing in your life, or you're searching for in relationships, that find you these people? For instance, let's say I'm someone who is very scared of abandonment, right? Like I don't want to be left. I'm very anxious. My relationship anxiety is over the top. Now, without really realizing, unconsciously, I might do things that actually would trigger the person to leave. For instance, I might, act very paranoid. I might like check up on them every now and then, basically suffocate the person without really realizing that my action is going to, lead as a consequence. They're going to leave me.
Hmm.
But rather, I would see it as, this person, they're always, like anyone, even the good guys, leave me. But it's not the
Hmm.
good guy that, has left, but it's actually the type of person that you influence them to become.
Hmm.
Is this making sense to you?
Yeah, I think, correct me if I'm wrong. So basically, there are certain behaviors that, as a person, say, if I have fear of being abandoned, and I have certain behaviors that I do, which is natural for me because of my trauma, my triggers, and all of that. And then these behaviors is consistent no matter which partner I'm with, whether I'm with my any partner, I'm going to show the same reaction, and the same reaction inevitably will get the same opposite reaction, right, from the other person.
Exactly. So basically, your life is determined by your mindset, like you said, where it is a matter of your attitude, your behavior, your emotions. When you do not know where it's coming from, right? Like instead of taking care of my need for attention, if I'm going and having like chocolate cake, right? Obviously, that need is still there, and that's going to make me get more desperate, and basically do all the wrong things for attention and affection. So I need to like first sit with myself and figure out what I need in a relationship in terms of my own growth.
Mm.
So I would always like look at it this way. A lot of people think, getting into like a relationship is like the final goal. But I think it's about looking at what your interests are in life, and then like based on your life trajectory, you kind of choose your friends, you choose your like future family, you create your community around your purpose, so that everything falls into place. You don't find a guy or like get like a group of friends and then you try to change them. Rather,
Mm.
it's smart for you to just like figure out your path first, so that like you're going to be having something to work on, whether you're in a committed relationship at the moment or not. Is this
Hmm.
making sense?
Yeah, I guess. So, how is this related to our topic today, where we are talking about the bodily connection and how we are understanding why he's not the one? So, where are we getting with this in this episode?
I think the reason why I wanted to specifically talk about this particular aspect of PCOS is a lot of times what you see as PCOS is a lifestyle issue, right? Yes, hormones are all over the place. Yes, you have behavioral symptoms, you have physiological symptoms, but they're also coming from this place of you not really knowing how to balance life. So there's this concept called lifestyle balancing, right? Where you see that your everyday movements are important, strength building or like resistance training is important. We also see that diet is very important for women. You need to get your micronutrients in, your minerals in, so that you're basically ready for each phase of the cycle when they happen. So when you look at it holistically, right, the only way you can actually take care of your body when you're at peace. So for you to be at peace, as strange as this sounds, you need people. You need healthy relationships. You need co-regulation. Yes, we can meditate, we can do yoga, we can transcend and like leave our body, have like experiences with aliens, maybe, I don't know. But it's also important for us to like have a friend to call when we're upset. It's also very important for us to, like think about family, think about children. Again, PCOS is a reproductive issue, right? So when we talk about anything related to lifestyle balancing, it has to prioritize recreation and procreation. Procreation is secondary. Maybe not everyone's interested in procreation, babies, but all of us should be interested in recreation. So how do we do that? Co-regulation.
Hmm. That's actually very positive. At the same time, I feel like whether it will be possible because, say, as a person, I'm talking about myself. I am not a big sharer, like you know. I do not ask for help and I do not go to people and tell that I have a problem, I want to talk about it. So say somewhere I do love the sort of the attention, the validation and the the fact that there's somebody I can vent to, right? But then it doesn't come easy to me and it doesn't come like, so considering people like me, do you think co-regulation would be difficult for us or is it like a, how do we go about?
I think co-regulation, when you're initiating it, it would be difficult because see, any difficulty with relationship actually has a starting point, and it usually has something to do with our childhoods, right?
Mm.
So as a child, if we went to our parents and we said, "Hey, look, I drew something," and then they said, "Ah, this is not great," now we're gonna hesitate to draw. We're not gonna, just hesitate to show it to someone. We're gonna start hesitating to draw only. So we actually let go of ourselves as a consequence of not getting loved, not being loved enough. So, as an adult with like, your prefrontal cortex and your, executive cognitive skills, we can kind of make that choice where we can be like, no, I can draw and I do need attention. And it is going to be difficult for me to ask for it because in the past, when I asked for it, I didn't get the right kind of attention. But you can, like uncomfortably start somewhere and then probably, basically choose people who have good judgment. I think that's the way that I go about it. Where, yes, like I'm not going to share with everyone. I'm not a big sharer with everyone. A lot of people in my life know me, like the general people who get to see me, right? I kind of have this persona where I'm like, I'm very boring. I don't have hobbies. I don't do anything for fun. I'm just boring. And I think that's like a defense mechanism because like I think the minute I talk about my life, there's gonna be a lot of like misunderstanding where they don't know where it's coming from. There's people don't really listen to you with that heart of like, oh, let me try to understand you, right? And you know this, like misunderstanding has always like hurt me in a very weird way. I've worked on it now. Now I don't really care. But like when I was in college and things, like I used to like this used to be my worst fear of like being misunderstood. Oh, I'm so misunderstood. Like, but I think that's what I've done. So
I
over the
think
years,
for me, I go with the other way. Like, I go with the intention that they will definitely misunderstand me. And, that is this assumption that they are going to misunderstand me. So I don't even try to give them a chance, which is the main reason, because I think most often people will want to solve you, or, try to take a bigger pedestal and say that, okay, I am much more bigger than you, I'm much more greater than you, I know how to take care of you, I know how to solve your problems. But I am not going with that intention. I'm going with an intention where you are sitting equal to me and putting a hand over my shoulders and saying, I understand. And I think there's very less people who you can do it with. And I think even to expect that, it's a big gamble that you have to do.
yeah, so this is what I started to do. I think like when I turned 25 or something, I started to do this thing. I actually saw this on an episode of White Lotus. I don't know if you've seen that series, but basically it's this idea that you kind of embarrassingly show up as yourself, especially if you're trying to be friends with them. Like if I like you, I will show you like weird things about me. Like that's gonna be the first thing that I share, and I'll see if you can handle that. And the minute, I see that you're trying to like, put me down or you're basically like getting uncomfortable because you can't handle the type of that I'm expecting you to handle, I disconnect and I'm like, okay, rejected, bye. That sort of a thing. Where I'm like, after that I can maintain like a very superficial whatever. But like because I think attraction is real. We kind of like some people stand out in life, right? So at those moments, I just go and I kind of share like the weirdest stories from my life and I see how they react to it, like a psychopath. Like, okay, react to it. And then when they react to it in a way that's like positive, where they're like open-minded still, and like you said, they don't think of me as like someone who needs help and someone who's like pathetic. Then I'm like, let's be friends, bro. Let's do this because that's what I want.
So now coming to our episode, like, how do our listeners and how do we co-regulate so that our relationships can be much better and we are able to get out of that, you know, abuse and attachment styles that we've been following so far?
I think, to kind of, before I answer this, I think we need to look at what co-regulation actually is and why it's natural and normal.
Hmm.
You know how when we're born, we're not really alone with survival. It was technically our mother who was aiding our oxygenation process through the umbilical cord. And then when it's cut, the reaction was basically trauma. We cried because, we were separated from our mother. And from then on, again, till like age 2 or 3, it's very difficult for us to process that we are alone. So whenever the mother is not there or the primary caregiver isn't there, we again freak out because we assume that it's kind of like almost missing a limb, right? Because we think the mother is us and mother, us, we are, our mother. We don't really see the difference, which is why when children are angry, they bite their mom or they hit their mom. They're not hitting their mom because they hate their mom. They kind of hate themselves because they're not able to take care of themselves. It's a very like psychologically complicated thing that I think a lot of mothers don't even understand this, right? They don't realize that the child is not hateful. The child actually is not having their needs met, which is why the child is like under that like self-destruction mode. So when we understand that we humans are interconnected and we are meant to be interdependent, we're able to see our needs not as a flaw, but as a condition for survival. So when I see you, having this need for stimulation, or when I see you having this need for, let's say, warmth, right? The first thing I think we need to do for each other is even if it's not my need, if I see you with that need, I think the first thing that I do is like normalize it. Oh, you're going through this, you must be feeling horrible, because that's like the right thing to do. You know this phrase, it's okay to not be okay. Uh, I think, like, the fact that we think I am not okay, when you ask someone, how are you doing? And they say, I'm not okay. I think, like, I am not okay is a genuinely natural response to bad things happening in life. When I say, I think I'm having, like, depressive thoughts or whatever, right? That's very natural if I've gone through something that's very depressing.
Hmm.
Right? So I think that's where we start, where co-regulation begins with us being there for like the people who are around us, where we normalize their natural reaction to life.
Hmm.
And we don't really have to solve it, like you said. We just have to sit with it. And if they're crying, let them cry. And I think after a point, once your emotions have passed through you, you feel better. You have like that clarity that hits you. And then the person who's been crying for like, say, 3 weeks suddenly knows what to do to kind of move forward in life. But until they're ready, can we just like shut up and hold each other's
So it makes me wonder, what about people who are alone? Like people who have very few people or maybe none. They don't have anybody. They live alone. Maybe they are in a, different country. They're alone and they are not much of a, extrovert. They don't make friends. So do you think that sort of loneliness they feel, they have to depend on them. They have no other choice. So what do you propose for them? Do you want them to get out and find someone to co-regulate, or do you have a other way out for them?
See, I think anytime we go through breakups, right, like some tear happens emotionally, I think there is that very strong trust issue that comes up. You really have a strong sense of mistrust after someone hurt you,
Hmm.
right? Someone hurts you. So I think it's very normal for you to kind of feel that pain before you kind of start connecting with others. As much as co-regulation is important, if let's say you were in like a abusive childhood, home, and then getting out, you again go through trauma. Because I've heard clients say this as well, where every single person they know, including their own parents, have abused them.
Hmm.
So for them, for you to go and sit with them and say, like, no, humans are good. No, like they've not seen the good humans. And somehow they attract only the ones that are there to exploit them. So I think for them, uh, I would suggest warmth and affection is still important. So get cats or dogs or some other
Hmm.
pet.
Hmm.
And see, I think life forms, I think, with animals, right? Like one beautiful thing is they know what unconditional love is. You don't have to like, there's no concept of conditional love with animals. So I think the more you interact with them, you kind of see the possibility that maybe love could exist, and slowly you kind of get better. But obviously, time has to take its course. But animals are amazing. I love animals. Humans are animals too, but they're kind of disappointing in the animal kingdom. Like the most disappointing out of the lot is, I think, humans. It's sad, but true.
So you're asking me to get a dog if I'm lonely. Okay, that
Or
makes
a cat.
sense. Okay, or a cat. Cats are more regulated, but yeah. But yeah, animals does sound like a good companion because I think one thing we people have been very collectivistic as a culture, and then we are moving towards more individualistic. Like we are becoming more. alone and more independent. But at the same time, independent doesn't mean that you have to let go of your basic needs like love and companionship and, friendships, and this whole good feeling of having people around, and this joy and laughter and this sharing and comfort. But I guess it's all going to be coming down to one thing, which is whether you are able to get out of this, the whole rut that you're feeling, that you're not able to get out of these attachments, that you're not able to get out of these difficult relationships, these abuse, the trauma, the trigger. But it all comes down to how you're going to regulate, in the form of how you're going to be aware of it. Where is going to start? Because it all comes down to our brain, right? Because when we think about our life, it's very difficult for us to just think, okay, I'm going to change it tomorrow, I'm going to change it next week. It's not going to happen. Of course, we all understand it's not going to happen. But what we are trying as a podcast, as people ourselves, and who's been also a psychologist, what we understand is you need to take the first step towards change, where you are saying, okay, today I want to be, I am this way, and I want to have a life where I'm filled with this many people. I'm filled with so many love, so many good companions, so many good people to depend on. And if that is your goal, if that is the healthy way that you're thinking, you need to start today and be aware and set right. Go for people. Try talking to the good people that you have. Try testing them out, how they are responding to you. And it just gets there one by one. I feel like that is what the whole idea of this channel is, that we are going to, by the end of this whole journey, I guess, we are going to become a better person. And yeah, do you have anything more to add, say?
Yeah, the things that you said, I think, have you seen this movie, We Bought a Zoo?
No.
Okay, so there's this one, line in the movie where basically the protagonist talks about how he met his wife.
Hmm.
And he says when he saw her, he knew that she was the one.
Hmm.
And he says to himself, 20 seconds of courage. That's all it takes.
Hmm.
And with that 20 seconds of like that adrenaline rush, right? He goes and he says, wow. And, like then watch the movie. I'm not going to tell you. But what you see is like in life with any important thing, right? I think all of us need to push ourselves for 20 seconds and experience that intense feeling of courage and do the thing that is the most daring thing to do. And when we do that, what we kind of see is we think it's impossible. We'll think, I'll never do that. Oh my God, not me. But once you do it, it's going to surprise you. And before you know it, you're going to be living with the one, or I don't know. I don't know what it is that you want, but basically you'll find happiness and peace. And this combination is something that I think all of us want and all of us deserve to experience in life. So I think with that, we'll conclude this episode. It was a very lengthy episode, but it was also like a very emotionally stripped down, vulnerable one. If you have thoughts related to whatever we spoke about, please do share it in the comment section. You can also email it to us so that we would read it. And, it would make us happy to know that you guys felt something when you're listening to us.